I reserve my right to yield my time to Summation from Florida.
That is your right.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would quickly like to remind you that human rights is not above federal law. Thank you, I yield my time.
Summation, Florida delegation. I'd like to point out that although I agree with previous pro-argument speakers that true, it is a heinous crime. True, it is a violation of human right. But it's still unconstitutional. And until the Constitution says otherwise, or Supreme Court interprets it otherwise, it is still unconstitutional. And in accordance with what a previous con speaker said, let's say you do file a case for molestation 40 years ago. Sure, there might be circumstantial DNA available, but the question is, does it actually apply to the case if the actual scene cannot be reconstructed based on memory alone? So sure, there might have been DNA for whatever reason, but can you just say that, oh sure, there was DNA, but was it actually there at the right time? How can you say that 40 years ago? Oh, in an investigation they'll ask you, oh, what were you doing at this time? Who did you see? What did you talk to? That'll be very difficult to recall these facts 40 years later, and again, it'll clog a system that is already overburdened with needless and frivolous cases. And I yield the remaining of my time to the chair.
From the state of Florida, I would like to reserve my right to yield Delegate Stefana from all United Nations.
That is your right.
I would just like to point out the fact that rape is a serious crime, whether the person committing rape is a stranger, a date, an acquaintance, or a family member. A child or other women who are raped may feel threatened or suppressed by some way by their rapist, and may wait to report this to the authorities until they are in a safer place away from their rapist. So those who don't want to eliminate the statute of limitation, tell those children, women, and even men that the traumatizing and frightening experience that they had does not matter. Tell them that their psychological and mental scars from being raped does not matter, all because they didn't report this case in an ample amount of time. Rape is still rape, whether they report it in 10 days or in 10 years. Now I'd like to yield the remainder of my time to Delegate Stefano from Malika.
Shane Stefano, United Nations. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to refute a former delegate's statement that federal laws are above human rights. I think not. Why else would we have our unalienable rights in our Declaration of Independence? Also, I'd like to refute somebody who said they don't remember what happened 5 years ago. If you were raped, I'm pretty sure you remember what happened 5 years ago. I'd also like to point out that the necessary and proper clause of the Constitution says whatever is necessary and proper of our government to do, we can do over the states. I'm paraphrasing. But in this case, it is necessary and proper to protect our citizens and bring criminals to justice. Therefore, I am strongly for this proposal, and I urge all of you to be for this proposal. I yield the remaining time to the chair.
Tennessee, may I reserve the remainder of my time to Roberts of Tennessee.
That is your right.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, during the school year, I work for a criminal court judge. In reality, the resources simply do not exist to enact this proposal. The fact is, the courts are overwhelmed. Already, without this piece of legislation, evidence is having to be discarded because the warehouses that hold the evidence are simply overflowing. And how on earth can we keep these open indefinitely when our resources are spread this thin? Don't the new cases deserve as much justice as the old ones? Thank you. And I yield the rest of my time to Roberts, Tennessee.
Matthew Roberts, Tennessee. A previous delegate mentioned the Declaration of Independence ensuring us the right to life. The Declaration of Independence is not a governing piece of law in the United States. It is a document that was written at the beginning of when America was being founded, and it is in no way a law in America. Second, I would also like to reiterate what a previous delegate said about states' rights. Yes, I do believe this proposal does violate the 10th Amendment because this power was not expressly given to the federal government in the Constitution. However, I do believe we should encourage the states to get rid of these statutes of limitations. We can all agree rape is wrong, but I think we can all agree too that an unconstitutional piece of legislation is wrong too. With that, I yield my time to the chair.
Some points I'd like to cover that were brought up in debate. The 14th Amendment states that the federal government has the right to subordinate states' rights in order to serve the protection of the general public. I don't think this could be any truer than in cases of rape, molestation, and incest. These are some of the most traumatic things that can happen to a person. Also, I'd like to address the case McCullough versus Maryland, and this established two principles: that the Constitution grants Congress implied powers for implementing the Constitution's express powers in order to create a functional national government for the betterment of the general public, and state action may not impede valid constitutional exercises of power by the federal government. Some other points that were brought up in debate were, would you remember? Well, 5 years later, I think you would remember if you were raped. That's a really traumatic thing, and studies have shown that typically victims will remember their attackers forever. And if there isn't sufficient evidence, there won't be a conviction. This is only allowing the trial to take place. It's not ensuring a conviction. If you don't have sufficient evidence, there won't be a conviction. And as to the comment about our courts being overwhelmed, does this mean we should just forget about old victims simply because there are new victims? No. The two main reasons that this needs to be repealed are biological. The biggest is biological evidence. 20 years ago, we didn't have DNA evidence. We've completely revolutionized the court system in this way. So because of forensic science and biological evidence, prosecuting rape and molestation cases is entirely possible years after an offense, making statutes of limitation completely outdated. And only 26% of rapes and attempted rapes are even reported. And according to the Department of Justice, the most common reasons victims do not report an assault is fear and shame. If victims are brave enough to come forward, don't they deserve to see their attacker put to justice? And 1/3 of molested children are younger than 6. 1 in 6 are under the age of 12. Most are too young to comprehend what's happening to them. But when they finally do, don't they deserve to see their attacker brought to justice? This proposal does not in any way alter the actual prosecution of a case. It's not changing how long you would go to prison in each state. It's not changing anything about the actual prosecution of the case, merely the time frame that it can be prosecuted. Rape is rape, and it shouldn't matter if the perpetrator is captured immediately or a decade later. They deserve to be punished for what they did. The psychological and physical damage that perpetrators cause their victims can last a lifetime. Not allowing these crimes to be prosecuted is simply not justice, and these statutes have no place in our legal system. We have an obligation and a duty to step up and protect our citizens. Thank you, and I yield my time to the chair.
Thank you, Delegate. We will now move into a period of voting on this proposal. Will the rovers please seal the chambers? The motion before this General Assembly is that proposal number 227 does pass. With all those in favor, please stand and say aye in your normal speaking voice. Aye. Please be seated. All those opposed? Nay. Please be seated. In the eyes of the chair, this proposal does pass.